second nature for you now. I've seen some of the ones that you've been doing, and it's they look really good and really interesting. So first and
Yeah.
foremost, thank you for joining me. Obviously when we got in touch and I saw what you was doing and the recent book that you'd released, for me it was perfect because I started this journey a little bit about myself. 'Cause I know we've not met before. I self-published my book around my journey with habits, happiness, and health. So for you to, have done what you've done with your background, I thought it was a natural opportunity to come through and talk about what you're doing. So first and foremost, what is the book? What is the book about, and how did it come to light initially?
It's been a journey, Jack. I have been in this area for about 35 years now. Most of the time I was actually just supporting my husband, Eldon Taylor. He is a New York Times best-selling author. I was assisting him in research. I was editing his books. So a great deal of my work was, as I said, in the background. But then he wrote a blog, I don't know, about 5 years ago now, talking about the importance of mind training. And because he's been in the field for so long, it's just second nature to him. So he doesn't go through quite as systematically. The blog was received very well. Everyone said it should be written as a book, but he has this habit of going 1, 5, 10. He doesn't have all the steps in between. My own background is in science. My degree's in microbiology. Um, I suppose I've been trained in those scientific methods, be very systematic, take it one step at a time, be very consistent.
Yeah,
You know, just the basic things there. So when he first handed me the outline of my training, I basically asked if I could have a go at this one myself, pretty much. So I took his outline, but then I put everything in my own voice, my own experiences, my own research, the questions that I found the most fascinating, the evidence that I needed to convince me that this stuff really works in a way that I could share with other people. So that's how my training came to be.
that's amazing. And you mentioned there about your background. Was it microbiology? You said, and that's fascinating for me. How did you? Obviously, you mentioned about Eldon there, your husband, who's been doing this for a while. New York Times bestseller. Try and get my words coming out right. But what was your first experience with psychology, and what was it? Was there a moment where you was like, I want to dig into this and get into this field and move away maybe slightly from that microbiology?
There was a particular event that changed the entire course of my life. I was working at the Leicester Royal Infirmary in the path lab there, and one day there were all these flyers that appeared around the hospital talking about a special lecture. It was sponsored by the hospital, but the lecture was on hypnosis and hypnotherapy. At that point, I had not taken hypnosis seriously at all. To me, it was done for entertainment. You get people on stage, you make them look like idiots, you give the audience a laugh. That was all
Yeah.
I thought about it. But the lecture was fascinating.
Hmm.
Coincidentally, there was a huge turnout. The auditorium was large. There were about 70 people who worked in my path lab, and most of them attended the lecture, but they were spread out throughout this huge auditorium full of doctors, nurses, the other labs. Coincidentally, when he asked three subjects to come up so he can demonstrate particular techniques, he happened to select people from my lab. So I knew they weren't shills. And the day after, Martin very proudly displayed the pin that had been stuck in his arm, and he had felt no pain. You know, I had a colleague of mine talk like a child. I had another colleague of mine totally forget the number six. She would count up and down from 1 to 10 and back again and totally omit the six. So I knew the technique was real.
Hmm.
But what really fascinated me, Jack, was one particular story where he talked about a woman who had a pain in her arm. She'd had a pain in her arm for about 10 years. She had seen all the doctors, all the specialists. No one had been able to help her. So, as a last resort, she came to this hypnotherapist who was an anesthesiologist during the day. I think he did the hypnotherapy on the side. Under hypnosis, they did the regression. She remembered a traumatic event. It was something that had upset her. It was some emotional kind of event. And at the time, it had upset her greatly, but then she had moved on from it, dismissed it, forgotten about it. The following day, she called the hypnotherapist up and said the pain had gone. The pain had actually gone right away, but she hadn't believed it. So she had waited for the following day to contact him. And I was fascinated by this idea that the mind, our past experiences, can have such a hold on us today. And sometimes these past events, as I would learn, don't have to be huge. It's not like, a huge trauma. It can just be someone has said something to you that has upset you and you've locked it away in your subconscious mind. And now it's expressing itself in inopportune places. As a result of this lecture, as I said, I found it fascinating. I went and had hypnotherapy myself, experienced hypnotic drawing, hypnotic writing, the age regressions, the idiomotor response. I experienced all of that. And then I went on and did a 3-year course in hypnosis and psychotherapy in the UK. At the end of that course, there was a special lecture that was being offered. There was this expert in pre-conscious learning that had come over from America, and that turned out to be Eldon Taylor. Now, he was talking about subliminal, and once again, that was something that I had totally dismissed. In the media, they turned that into a bit of a joke.
Almost a
They
pseudoscience.
Yeah, and that was my views on that as well. But as I said, the lecture was fascinating. Eldon Taylor was fascinating. I ended up coming over here. We ended up getting married, and as I said, I've spent the last 35 years first of all assisting him in his research and the editing, but I also practiced all the techniques. Everything he came across, I would try on myself as well. And then that led to mind training, where I did a deep dive and did my own research.
Amazing. And it's funny how these things play out, isn't it? You can it all works out. It's crazy to think that if you had never gone to that initial lecture, you may never have gone down that path and then, met your husband and we wouldn't be sat here chatting today. So, you look at these different things and fate or whatever it is, these small events like you mentioned there about the, small events that can affect you in hypnosis, these butterfly effects that affect our life. Sometimes when you sit back and reflect on them or just hear them from another person's perspective, they are mind blowing. So you mentioned mind training there. That's the book, and it starts with a quote which I'll read out, which I absolutely loved, and it was to enjoy good health, to bring true happiness to one's family, to bring peace to all. One must first discipline and control one's own mind. If a man can control his mind, he can find the way to enlighten, and all wisdom, virtue will naturally come to him. And that's such a good introduction because what you then talk about later on, really, really starts off that ball rolling. And what I was really sort of intrigued by was what was the need to blend science with self empowerment for you? Because you talked there about your background in science and then being around these people that might, a critical thinker like yourself and these very scientific situations, and then to do something like hypnosis or subliminal messaging you mentioned there, it gets quite a hard time maybe in like the mainstream media, and some people think it's like poppycock or pseudoscience. Did you feel like this was your opportunity to blend this with the hard science and sort of scream from the rooftops that this is what it's all about and these are the proven methods?
there's actually two parts to your question there, Jack. Yes, the science part of it was really important to me. But there's also the self-empowerment
Mm,
aspect of it. Now, the science provides all the evidence, and that was really important. There was a lecture that I went to a few decades ago, and it was some self-help teacher. And I enjoyed the presentation, but at the end, this woman got up to ask a question. And she said that I believe in self-help. I'm implementing all of these things into my life. I am feeling like my life is improving, but my husband thinks it's all poppycock. And as a result, her relationship was being harmed by this. And it's
mm,
not the first time that I have heard this kind of thing where one partner wants to follow a particular journey and the other one is scoffing at it. So the science part of it, I wanted to address that area. I wanted to show, no, there is a scientific basis behind all of this. Mind training draws on over 200 independent research studies on the different aspects of the mind and how it works and why we do what we do. I've drawn on these 200 research studies in order to create tools and techniques that people can put into effect. But the second part, Jack, and to me it's even more important, is the self-empowerment aspect. In the self-help industry that I have been in for 35 plus years, there are lots of teachers out there that will provide a recipe.
mm.
They basically say, do this, 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 and then the universe will open up its cornucopia of happiness and prosperity.
The Pandora's box, what
But
we're all desperate for.
they don't they don't explain why the techniques work. Now we're all different, Jack.
Mm,
We have different proclivities, we have different tastes, different preferences. There are things that one person can incorporate into their life and somebody else can't do so, and vice versa. I wanted to provide real, real tools and techniques that the person would understand and then they could personalize it for themselves. In one part of mind training, I go through a particular meditation that has been shown in numerous independent research studies. They've been published in peer-reviewed journals. These are authored by professors at prestigious universities, but it's a 12-minute meditation that has been shown to improve cognitive abilities, improve health and well-being, reverse Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. It was pretty impressive. And this also played a huge role in why I wanted to write mind training as well, because this particular research study, as I said, it was based on a particular meditation, but the explanations given for the meditation were all wrong. Now, they said it was totally secular, and when I first heard it, I knew. You know, it doesn't matter how far you move away from the religion that you're brought up in. I
mm,
was brought up Sikh.
mm.
My family is Sikh. I still hold lots of the beliefs. I just don't call myself Sikh anymore because I don't follow the formalized religion. I don't do formalized religion. But this meditation, you may have heard of it, Jack. People often think of it as a satanama.
Mm.
When I first heard that, I knew exactly what it was meant to be. And I went and researched and I checked. And in the Sikh scriptures, the word is Satnam. Now, the explanations given for this meditation went along the lines, as I said, I dug deeply. I actually went out and looked at the primary author and what the explanations were. And amongst the explanations were that enunciating these four syllables would activate different acupressure points inside your mouth.
Wow.
But there's a huge difference in pronunciation between Satanama and Satnam.
Mm. Just
The
from the way
syllables
you
are
say it
different.
there,
Your
it sounds
mouth,
completely different.
exactly, your mouth works differently. It's not sa, it's sa.
Hmm.
It's not ta, it's the. Ta and the, your tongue does different things. So the acupressure points wasn't an explanation for that.
Hmm.
They talked about doing it in a sing-song voice. They said that it was totally secular. And when you say Satan Amar, it does become totally secular because it doesn't mean anything. They said that the four words meant something like birth, life, death, rebirth. That's not what Satnam means, and I knew that. You won't find that explanation anymore. I can only assume some Sikh scholars objected to it and went in and said, "Don't say that. That is not what it
It's
means.
not a true
It means true
representation.
name."
Yeah.
No, it's not. It doesn't have anything to do with life, birth, death, rebirth.
Hmm.
I did a lot of digging, Jack, because I was brought up in the Sikh faith, but I'm not a Sikh scholar
Hmm.
by any means. So I verified all of this. And the reason I take this apart in such depth in mind training is because once you understand what is going on, then you have the ability to rebuild it in a way that suits you. You could do it totally secular and say Satan Omar, it's still going to work. And it can even have, if it doesn't have the religious undertones for you, to some people, science has become a religion. So
Definitely.
you have this scientific research that shows that Sartan Almar has this effect. Well, then you give in to the God of science. But what if you have your own faith? What if you are Christian or Buddhist or Catholic or anything else? Is there something that you could use that could bring it in yourself? So when I took this meditation apart, it's like it's basically a 4/4 kind of time. It's repetitive. That repetitive nature, that slower nature, when you start repeating the different syllables slowly, it slows down brainwave activity. So I explain the hypnotic component to it. You can have whichever syllables you like. When I do it, I don't have just four syllables. I choose something else from my own religious background that I want to use, and that's eight. So it's two sets of, you know, four beats. It's just the slow rhythmic. That's what matters. The sing song, it doesn't have to be to the tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb. There's nothing in that. But you look at mantras and different religious practices, and they often have music to a degree.
Yeah.
So when I do it, I go back. When we're upset, it doesn't matter how much you leave religion behind. When you're upset and you feel that need to pray, you go back to your roots. So to me, I will frequently go back to my Sikh roots.
Yeah.
And so I chose a tune that worked for me. But it could just as well be something like Jesus Loves Me. Maybe it's a tune of a hymn that you had as a child. Maybe it was something that your parents sang to you when you were really young. These things are going to have a huge benefit to you because not only are you going through the mechanical nature of it, but you're bringing in the emotional component as well. So self-empowerment, wrapping it all the way back. Sorry, this was kind of a
No,
long
no, no. It's
answer to
super
your
interesting.
question. But the self-empowerment part of it is to provide the information so the reader can then personalize it for themselves. One of the things that upsets me in the self-help arena, there's the law of attraction.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure that you'll have heard of that. I don't believe it's a law. There is a kernel of truth in there. What you expect is what you're going to pay attention to, and that can help it come to you. If you don't think you're lucky, then when good opportunities come to you, you're not going to see them.
Yeah. The perception.
So there is a kernel of truth in there. But I do know that there are law of attraction teachers who will tell their students, if it didn't work for you, you're not doing it right. I
It's,
didn't like that, Jack.
it's quite
I
dangerous, isn't
didn't
it?
like it is. You're relying on this teacher. They say that you either didn't do it right or also has to be divine time. So how does it become a law? You know,
Yeah.
gravity has a law, things fall. If it's a law and you follow it, you
Work.
should get the result that you want. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
it's so interesting that. Sorry to interrupt you there. I'm just sort of like piecing everything you've said and certain points that you've mentioned and like wrapping them all up in my mind because you've just got my brain ticking, which is great. But it's super interesting to hear you talk, about the science and the self empowerment, and then some like the misconceptions that you've heard people face as well. And for me to hear it, it's sort of you've covered all the bases there. You talk about faith, and I think sometimes self help and well being and different styles like meditation. I feel like certain people can be put off by it because it does seem very maybe religious or faith, but it's spiritual, isn't it? And I think some people in the modern world are very, very scared and not comfortable with what they don't know. And I think it's great that you're trying to, well, not trying to, you are using the science to remove some of the fluff and the grey around it. Because, like you said there about the couple, one person's all in and willing to try it, but someone has, that reluctance. And you're absolutely right about some people are very much in like the doctrine of the religion of science. Well, if science can't prove it, it can't be true. And science is one of them things, isn't it? If a better theory came round tomorrow and everyone bought into it, well, we'd believe that as well. So there's so much grey in these things, isn't there? And like you said, it does come down to the individual, and we are sort of fed this rhetoric of, oh well, this works, it's a law, when in reality you bang on it, it's not at all.
no, but there are lots of tools and techniques that do work to improve your life. It's not going to open up a cornucopia of prosperity. I literally, Jack, I had someone call me up um, looking for a program to help them in their business. They were in sales and they wanted a program, but they couldn't use the program more than half an hour a day. That was the actual maximum. And they did not want to do any work. They wanted a program that would enhance the law of attraction. I promise you, Jack, they wanted to sit at their desk and have the phone just ring with people wanting to give them money. Now, even the best of the law of attraction teachers, they're going to tell you you have to put action behind it as well.
Yeah, 100%.
You have to do something. It does take some work. So there are some dangerous ideas out there, and it's because of those types of situations that you can have people saying, "Oh no, that's all foo-foo, woo-woo stuff. You're crazy to believe in that. This self-help stuff is wild." And that's where it comes from. There are some crazy ideas out there. I wanted to dispel all of that. You talk about people being nervous about meditation, but meditation, hypnosis, mindfulness, they're all ways to slow down brainwave activity. They're all ways to reduce stress, to reduce the stress and the pressure in your life, reduce the cortisol, increase the happy brain chemicals. Doctors recommend meditation today. It's a great tool. You can keep it totally secular if you like. You can bring in your faith, but it will bring down blood pressure. It will improve your immune system. It will help you feel calmer. It will open up creativity, and you can do it how you like. But when it's taught in a particular recipe, well, then you don't understand what's involved. When you understand what's involved, you can personalize it for yourself. And so, yeah,
A lot of people treat it as a square peg circle hole situation, don't they? They believe that they've seen oh, well, someone like this on social media has done it like this, or the person on the telly did it like this. So if I don't do it that way and it doesn't work for me, then it's not for me. And my own personal journey with meditation very much was that. It was that I had to find something that worked for me to switch my mind off, and wasn't necessarily, you know, I know some people who like, mantras, or like you mentioned there, it's quite musical. For me, it's just breathing and silence, because that's the only thing that turns my brain off and gives me that moment to be present and not thinking about the future or the past and all that grey and chaos. But another thing you mentioned there, and you've sort of briefly touched on your plethora of experience and how long you've been in this space, and I can imagine the transformation in self-help and self-empowerment and well-being over the last 20 years that you've been in it, or 2025. It must be a completely different space right now than what it was when you first started. And how gratifying is it, I imagine, because I imagine, 20, 30 years ago, doctors weren't recommending meditation to people, and you was probably banging that drum and understood the benefits of it and what it did for people. Is it gratifying now to see the change in society around these topics?
It is, and it isn't, Jack. The fact is, things move too slowly. Yes, there are more and more people who are interested in this. There are lots of people who are teaching this stuff. There are also so many people out there who still believe they are just who they are because genetics made them, their experiences made them. There isn't anything they can do about it. So there are lots of people who are not open to this at all. But this brings in a whole other area, Jack. And to me, it's spiritual, but it's grounded in science too. There is lots of the greatest minds in the world will tell you adamantly that free will does not exist.
Hmm.
And it makes perfect sense when you go through genetics. There are genetic predispositions to alcoholism, to criminality. Genetics has an influence when you then pair that with your upbringing and your environment and your experiences. That all plays a role. You also have, there is pretty strong evidence that our choices are made by our subconscious minds. In
Hmm.
fact, technicians looking at the equipment will can predict what choice you're going to make. I actually talk about three different scientific research that was done um, that looked at activity in the subconscious mind, going back to Benjamin Libet in the 80s, using fMRI, using electrodes. As technology improved, they just did more and more. But what they found was there is activity in the subconscious mind before you make a choice. And the choices in these experiments were pretty basic, like, am I going to press the button with my right hand or my left hand?
Hmm.
But technicians looking at that, looking at the activity, can tell you what it is you're going to choose up to 7 seconds before you've made the choice.
Wow.
Before you say, I'm choosing, it's already done. Our subconscious mind is a repository of all of our experiences. Because of our negativity bias, that takes a lot more real estate in our subconscious mind, but they're old experiences. So when we make an automatic choice, where frequently it's the subconscious mind that's making the choice and it's making it based on old information. But bringing this back to the idea of free will, experts will say that, well, this demonstrates there isn't any such thing as free will. But the perspective my husband and I have is if the choices are made by the subconscious mind, well, let's learn how the subconscious mind works, how it intakes information, how it gets programmed, and how we can program it to suit our own purposes, to suit our own goals. Just because as a child, I have this particular experience where I was doing a public speaking event. It was like I was like 8 years old. It was a school performance, and I had to. have this speaking part, and I was embarrassed.
Mm.
I had to switch between two different roles. The audience laughed. They were laughing with me. I see that today.
Yeah.
I look back and think these are just parents, and they all thought I looked really cute as I changed from one role to the other. At the time, I was embarrassed.
Mm.
They were laughing at me. So plugged away in my subconscious mind is I don't want to be embarrassed again. I don't want to humiliate myself again. Therefore, I won't do any public speaking. And that is the automatic information as I got older. And I used to be petrified of public speaking, Jack. I would run a mile. I was, it was awful. Doing this kind of interview just would not have happened.
Wow.
It's old information. It's old information that doesn't suit me today. It's old information that I can look at and say, well, actually, I interpreted that situation totally incorrectly anyway. It loses all of its power. But what happens when you start taking control, start programming your own subconscious mind, you start experiencing changes in your life, and that's guaranteed. When you implement the techniques that I outline in mind training, your life will change. That is absolutely 100%. Just choose the techniques that work for you. But when you do these things, then you become part of somebody else's experience. Those people around you who say, no, I'm just the way that I am, I can't change anything, it's not possible, they will look at you and say, you used to be petrified of public speaking, and now I'm seeing you all over social networking, doing all these interviews. Um, they will look at the person I was. It's night and day, Jack,
Yeah.
from where I was when I worked in the path lab, my insecurities, inadequacies, just my self-confidence, my self-esteem, everything has changed pretty drastically. So someone looking at my life, if they're aware of where I was and where I am now, well, that becomes part of their experience. They experience watching the transformation in me and in you, because you'll have the same kinds of things, Jack, as you've explored this journey for yourself. It becomes part of somebody else's experience. So we become the change that we want to see in the world. Maybe that person who sees the change in me says, perhaps there's something to this.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'll give it a try.
You
Maybe
almost
I'll
become
try
the perfect
meditation.
advocate for your own story. And, I always find that interesting there that for me, my journey was if I'd have stayed being who I was, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I know that is obvious. And, it sounds almost blasé to say, but in a parallel universe or whatever, there's a version of me that didn't make that decision, and there's a version of me that's stuck in that environment and didn't, seize the opportunity to change. And what I find is super powerful is that when you make these changes, you understand if your environment was the right environment for you. You sort of very quickly realize that, oh well, this was almost a toxic environment. This environment was a factor that was keeping me from growing, be that people's opinions or the people I'm around, sort of me mirroring what they're doing subconsciously. And it's weird that you brought up the like the pattern thinking and the subconscious, because that was the question I was going to ask you, and then you naturally segued into it. So you beat me to it by 7 seconds. You'd already got to me before I'd even thought about asking it to you. But it's so interesting, and I think a lot of people do sadly think, oh, this is it. These are the cards that I've been dealt, and what's the point?
Exactly. In my early 20s, Jack, I I was at that point where I was actually very proud of my own perspective on life. I knew I wasn't going to be the prettiest. I wasn't going to be in the in group. I wasn't going to be the smartest. I wasn't going to be. I had all of these things that I knew I wouldn't be part of that group. It was okay to be in the B group,
Mm.
if you want to phrase it that way. What I didn't realize was, Jack, was that in accepting who I was putting a cap on my abilities. There were so many things I wouldn't try. I couldn't do public speaking, so I wasn't going to try. It was okay. I was proud of the fact of it's okay just being me. This is how God made me.
Hmm.
This is how, this is just who I am, and I can't change it. So it's a lot better to accept it because life is a lot easier.
And you think
But it puts a cap. It stops
100%.
you from growing.
And you mentioned there about that, and I think people might listen and be, oh, well, being content with who you are and, being able to accept who you are. So many people strive for that and wish that they could do that, but there's also an element of that where it's almost counterintuitive to be submissive to yourself. I think you have to challenge yourself. You have to be, you know, making yourself feel uncomfortable to a degree, and that might not necessarily be, swimming the channel or doing a 300-mile bike ride. But as long as you're challenging yourself and pushing your boundaries, and you're still content, which might sound a bit of a paradox because how can you be content but pushing yourself? But I feel like I'm in this place where the podcast is a great example. I'm pushing myself to do something, but as long as I keep doing it, I'm content because I enjoy it. I get a lot from it. You know, hopefully it goes somewhere and hopefully it's, a big success one day and it can be monetized and all the, insert dreams here. But what I'm getting from it now is good enough for me to keep doing it and keep pushing myself to be better, if that makes sense. I might have just butchered that. I've not said it as eloquent as you have.
No, no, that makes perfect sense, Jack. There's different kinds of contentment. There's
Mm.
a contentment that says, I'm just going to remain exactly where I am. And there is a much more beautiful contentment that comes that says, I'm on the path that I wish to be. I am going to continue growing. We have an expression around here. There's actually a project that we're working on right now, and it is called How High Is Your Up? What happens is lots of people come into self-improvement, personal development, call it what you will, because they have a particular issue that they want to deal with. And then they deal with that issue. And for some people, they just stop right there. But for other people, they say, oh, I fixed that. What else can I fix? How else can I improve? How much higher can I go? And to me, that is my journey. I have come so far, Jack, from the person I was. And yet in front of me, I see how much further I can go. It's a different kind of contentment. There is a joy in life to constantly stretch myself, and it has lots of other benefits as well. One of the research studies I talk about in mind training, they were looking at nuns.
Hmm.
Now, they often do research study on nuns, and it must be because it's a community that they can track for longer periods of time.
Yeah.
But in this one particular research study, they looked at diaries that the nuns had kept. And then after the nuns passed away, they did autopsies. And they would often find brains that were riddled with Alzheimer's.
Wow.
But the nuns had not expressed any Alzheimer's at all. They had not shown any of the symptoms. And it was the nuns who were the most optimistic, the most engaged, who had these benefits. So when you look at optimism and pessimism, optimistic people will keep hold of their cognitive abilities a whole lot longer. They will live longer, be more prosperous, have better relationships, be healthier. Optimism and pushing the brain to learn new things so that you don't just, as children, it's easy to learn new things. The neurons form all their different pathways. But as you get older, you stop having such wide experiences. You choose the habits that you like, and so the other neurons die away, and you just continue down particular pathways. Learning new things creates new pathways in your brain. It helps your brain to grow.
Hmm.
As you know, with the business you and I are both in, it's it isn't just what we're teaching about. There is also the marketing aspect of it, the technology behind it, learning this podcast platform or that podcast platform. I'm constantly being pushed by technology, and I just say, great, that's going to do great things for my brain. Even when I'm tired, it's like, do I have to learn something else new? Do I have to learn new software?
Yeah.
Where the heck is this again? So it can be frustrating, but in the long run, it's doing marvelous things to your brain. Keep on learning, keep on growing, keep on striving higher, and you'll benefit from it. It's not about becoming immortal.
Yeah.
It isn't about becoming perfect. It's about improving a few degrees at a time, 10% at a time, get 10% better and then get 10% better than that. And just keep on going. It's about living life to the full. It's about not aging as people tell you. You're 50, you need to start slowing down. Oh, we're 60 now, we can't do this anymore. No,
Hmm.
it's about going as far as I can. I will live as long and as healthy as my body's going to allow me to. I'm not going to let my brain tell me that I'm old. I'm not going to put these barriers on myself, because what happens if you tell yourself, "Oh, I'm 60 now, I have to slow down," and then you slow down and then your body stiffens up and you don't have the flexibility or the energy that you once had. You see, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Age itself can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's out there. You watch media. People are talking about what happens when you age. Age doesn't have to mean becoming decrepit.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to mean losing cognitive abilities. There are many things that you can do to keep your flexibility, to keep your health, to keep your stamina.
Well, hopefully,
All you have to do is do them.
I, I've my previous work is in gyms and places like that, and some people are incredible. They're in the 90s and going to the gym every day, and they've made it a part of their routine. They've made it a reason of, I think a lot of them, it's a reason to get out of bed in the morning. It's a part of the routine. It's what they enjoy, and I'm sort of really loving listening to everything tie up from what I've done, like researching and looking in the like skimming through the book and stuff that you've talked about. And there's a lot in there about self-sabotage being a common problem, and the subconscious and things like that. But how you've mentioned it there is, we are the authors of our own story, and we can have whatever narrative and perspective that may be. So to hear you explain there about optimism and pessimism, it and that study about the nuns is incredible. But it it's sort of reassuring that, not reassuring, maybe that's the wrong word, but it's affirming that, if you are going to aim to be positive, that you are going to be dealt with setbacks. You are going to find struggles, like you mentioned, though, me and you in this industry, which is beautifully chaotic at times, and there's all so much going on, and you have to learn things. There's days where I might be speaking for you, but I can imagine if you're anything like me, you can be frustrated by, oh, there's another thing that I have to do. Oh, well, this file hasn't worked, or this isn't uploaded. There's a spelling error there, which is a common one for me. Um, but you've got to have that perspective that it's a good problem. It's a problem that's shaping me, and that how I deal with it and how I approach it has the knock-on effect. There's always two pathways, I think. There's like, the positive aspects or the negative, and my wife does a great job of trying to keep me on the positive. I think naturally, for a long time, I was probably a glass half empty sort of guy, but I've been really working hard to change that, and I just love that. You know, you talk about how people can be better. How can people who maybe aren't on this path become aware of the automatic behaviors and how can they, process that? I know that's something you talk about in the book a little bit.
There has to be an interest, first of all. It goes back to what I was talking about, free will.
Hmm,
Um, I be the change that you want to see in the world, and somebody else will believe change is possible as well. You can take a horse to water, you can't make them drink.
true.
They have to they have to have some of their own experiences. But what happens, everyone reaches a point in their life where they say, I don't want this particular problem anymore. I'm going to do something about it. And that's how their journey will begin. And you and I are just further along on the journey. So we have the expression too. We teach what it is that we want to learn. I want to keep on learning. I'll keep on teaching. I'll keep on interacting with other people. I will keep doing my research. And as I share that with other people, the learning goes in deeper. It just goes in deeper and deeper, and it becomes part of my life. But you can't convince someone who doesn't want to be convinced, Jack.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't try to, I don't, go out on the street corner on a pulpit and I'm not trying to do that. Those people who want to learn will naturally gravitate to these kinds of places, this kind of podcast. They're gonna they're gonna gravitate there. They will hear something, something will resonate,
Hmm.
and it will just work for them. So yeah, I'm really not trying to change the whole world, Jack. I'm only interested in improving those around me, the people I talk to. I will assist them. I'll give them a hand up. Um,
Almost
I will
jump
help
starting
in
the
that way.
people that need it, giving them that little push to get the snowball rolling. And you're completely right. Sometimes I feel like people, I go, I keep my brain keeps going back to that law of attraction example that you gave. That someone thought they could just sit there and expect the phone to ring and make money. But sadly, that's a lot more common than we probably realize. People want things to be given to them and not necessarily earn it. And I think what the book does and what you're talking about gives people the practical tools on how to go and earn it. With these things that it's a toolkit, isn't it? You're providing people with this toolkit, with this scientific research and this background, and almost taking some of the dogma. Maybe that's the wrong word, but you're taking some of the grey out, aren't you? And trying to say like, even if spirituality or religion or insert here scares you a little bit. Well, here's the science. Here's the additional spoke to the wheel that might just be the final thing that makes it stable enough to take you on your journey. And I I'd love to know what you think in your research and the way you've dealt with it, because I imagine you've come up against some people who aren't necessarily as enthusiastic about this as maybe we are and pushed back on what you're saying and stuff. But what are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions around self-empowerment or well-being that you tend to see on a regular basis?
I think you kind of have two fields. The self-help industry, if you look at media and entertainment and movies, how many movies have we seen where there is a self-help teacher and then you find out, they're kind of shallow.
Yeah,
They're not as optimistic themselves, or they're actually just not good people. So the media has perpetuated this idea that self-help is full of woo-woo stuff.
yeah,
It is silly
charlatans.
and it doesn't make exactly. And that was exactly the goal behind mind training. I wanted to bring in all the science. I wanted to open it up to those people who want a whole lot more. They want the scientific basis behind it. I wanted to give them all of the hard evidence they had. There are lots of people who are simply interested in why we do what we do. There are lots of psychology books that make it to the top of the Times bestsellers list. People have that interest. But what happens is the best psychology kinds of books, they don't actually provide tools and techniques as to what to do with the information. With the best self-help books, they don't give you the science behind it. I just try to bring the two together, and that is very much my approach. But I also have a take it or leave it kind of attitude. The people that want my help, I'll be right there, absolutely right there. But I'm not going to try and convince someone who just wants to attack the ideas and knock it all. They'll come to it in their own time. I believe in planting seeds.
Yeah,
My life becomes an example that becomes a seed. I may tell them something, but I'm not attached to it.
yeah. No, I
I'm not
love that.
attached
I
to it.
love
I just,
how you sort of how you described that there, and the sort of the example and the analogy between the psychology books and the self-help book is brilliant. I've never thought about it like that, and it it sort of segues quite nicely into what I was going to ask is if there's a section of the book that you're most proud of, what is that section and why?
that's a hard one, Jack. There is a storyline that runs through mind training, and you have to follow the story. You see, making changes in your life is not easy.
No.
You have to have enough incentive to do so. You have to believe that the work is going to pay off. There are lots of tools and techniques in my training that are simple,
Mm,
incredibly simple. And I hearken back to when I was a child watching TV. How many of those kids' movies do you see where, especially in England, I was brought up in England, obviously, um, but you have this person, a male or a female, middle aged, that open the front door because they're going to take their morning constitutional and they take that deep breath. And they are rather comedic.
yeah.
They are portrayed that way. They're portrayed as being extreme. But there are lots of tools and techniques in mind training that can be that basic. But the person needs the incentive to do them. And if you've only seen these cartoon images, then you're not going to. But when you have all of the science, so for me, looking back at these comedic images of, that man with a walrus mustache coming out and he's going to all that silly walk that people do, that I don't want to be in that category.
Mm,
But no, every morning I get up pretty early. I'm normally doing exercise come 6 o'clock in the morning. If I can get outside, I'm going to, because if I step outside into the sunlight, I'm going to get a serotonin boost. If I do some exercise, I'm going to get an endorphin boost. If I can bring in some awe. So just take a few seconds to appreciate the blue sky, the birds singing. You find something, you bring in awe that improves your well being as well. When I go for a run, we talked earlier about the 4/4 beat of
mm,
the Satar Nama. Well, for me, I do meditations when I'm working, when I'm doing my dishes, and when I go for a run. And the longer the run, the deeper the meditation, because I get into that rhythm. It's
yeah.
that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, as my feet pound the pavement, and that slows down brainwave activity. And I have written some of my best creative pieces in my mind when I'm out on a run because it opens up space for those things. It reduces all of the stress. So you combine these techniques. So you compare what I do every morning is a variation on these comedic older people going out for their morning constitutional, but I provide all the science for it.
Yeah.
And I show you how you can layer things on. You just add on different elements to it. So it doesn't take more and more time. You just learn the techniques, you habituate them, and then it's really easy. And then you have the well, people say, I don't want small things that help. I want to be rich right now.
Yeah, I want the big
And
changes.
I to that I will say small changes accumulate. And that doesn't mean you're taking one step at a time on a 1,000-mile journey. It means that you take that one step on a time that puts you onto a different trajectory so that you can reach your destination faster. It speeds up the process, but the changes are just small. So the value of optimism is that's really simple. And I have examples as to how you can change things if you're naturally a pessimistic, glass half empty type of person, how you can change into a glass half full person. You just take some time each day to feel gratitude,
Mm,
to appreciate what it is that's in your life. And they have done the research studies there, and they show that if you can do that today, then your future experiences will have fewer stressful events. Now, that isn't to say that life changes. It's not like God has come down and changed your life and everything is hunky dory in your life. It's that you get a better perspective on life. So what can be really stressful to somebody else isn't stressful to you. This too will pass. It's not important. I'm going to focus on what matters instead. These things, so these small changes accumulate, and they can take you from walking this long path to to running or to driving. You're just going to reach your goal a whole lot faster. And the techniques are small.
I love
They're
that.
small, they're effective, they work.
And it segues very nicely to the two questions that I always ask the guests at the end of the podcast. And I've got, I always try and play a game with myself to see if I can guess any. But after, looking into the book and looking into yourself, and you've mentioned there about, gratitude and meditation. And I know in the book you talk about journaling and things. What are the three habits that you do or have done in your life that you would recommend to the everyday person?
Habits. The most important thing I think for everyone to know is you have the ability to change your life. You have the ability to get into the driver's seat of your life. You have to make that choice. You have to do that work. When it comes to habits that I do every day, things that I have habituated, I've already told you, I will go out in the morning, get my exercise, and that gives me the serotonin boost, the endorphin boost, the meditation, the relaxation, the lower blood pressure. I get all of that. But if you don't want to do that, one of the things that I do, especially since COVID, when everyone was washing their hands a whole lot more, I bring in mindfulness. Every time I go to the bathroom, I wash my hands and I will take a second or two to appreciate the warm water on my hands, the feeling of the smoothness of the lava. I will look up in the mirror and smile at myself. They have shown, I thought this was ridiculous when I first came across it, but they show that simply putting a pencil between your teeth, which forces your mouth into an artificial smile, simply doing that, your brain will produce endorphin.
Wow.
You can make your brain happier. It's a two-way street. So every time I wash my hands, I bring in the mindfulness, which is a little bit of meditation, a little bit of self-hypnosis that slows down brainwave activity, reduces cortisol in my system. I will look up at the mirror and I will smile at myself. And then I will tell myself, you've got this, Ravinder. Using your own first name
Yeah.
has been shown too to have a great effect. It, the information gets in deeper. It just becomes a whole lot more powerful. So whenever I go to the bathroom, I incorporate all of that. It doesn't take any time whatsoever. I'm going to wash my hands anyway, but I come out of the bathroom with a reduced stress level. If I'm feeling particularly stressed, I will do the smiling, but the smiling goes even deeper. So you have to have the Duchenne smile. The Duchenne smile is the one that reaches your eyes, gives you all those laughter lines.
Yeah.
But that has been shown to reduce stress and diaphragmatic breathing. So once again, if something has happened, if I've got another technological issue and the website has crashed, I take a few diaphragmatic breaths. I will take a second or two to take that deep breath, feel my diaphragm stretch. You just try it. It feels good.
Mm.
Most of us breathe rather shallow, but you take that deep breath, feel the rib cage lift, feel the diaphragm expand. You will feel it right now. You will feel that difference. It's a bit like yawning. So I do those things. And then the other thing that I will do is at night when I go to bed, my life's busy. I don't have time to journal. I talk about the advantages of journaling. To me, that's just not something I can incorporate. But when I'm in bed, I will take a few diaphragmatic breaths. So I produce some happy brain chemicals to take into my sleep. I then think of three things I'm grateful for. And it can be something as simple as it was a beautiful day today, the sun was shining, but it takes your focus away from all the things that are wrong in life and you focus on gratitude. So I think of three things I'm grateful for, and then I do the forgiveness exercise on on part of the technology that we use. We have the forgiveness set is I forgive myself, I forgive all others, I am forgiven. When you're full of blame and shame and guilt, it holds you back.
100%.
Forgiveness is really important. And then I start thinking about those people maybe who have upset me, and I forgive them and I release it.
Yeah.
And I sleep beautifully, Jack.
I
I
love that.
sleep beautifully.
I love that. And you sort of you mentioned there about being grateful in bed, and it's something that I talked to someone else about on the podcast, and it was something that I tried. Is that our negativity bias really does just kick in when we go to bed, and we're in the darkness and we're in the silence. And like you said before, you mentioned it a little while ago that our negativity bias takes up so much of our brain that it is a really good thing to do, to just think about what you're grateful for and the positives in your life before you go to sleep. And it definitely does reduce that, not it's not anxiety, but that anxiousness of what the negativity bias can create and make your sleep suffer from that. And the hand washing one's a great one. That is a very unique one that I've never heard before. So thank you very much for sharing that. And the other two were brilliant as well. Now the one that I do finish on is the counter of that. Is that if there was a habit or a routine that you used to do and stopped doing it, or you've never done it before in your life and you'd like to introduce it, what would that one habit or routine be and why?
That's a hard one, Jack. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't have an answer for you there, Jack. I see life as a journey. I'm constantly trying to improve. What happens with me is when I come across something and I realize, oh, wow, I've been doing that. I have learned now to question my subconscious mind. And the more you question your subconscious mind, the more it will give you the answers. The more you realize that the answers lay there. So if there's a problem in my life, I will start asking myself, where did it come from? How did it start? Why am I doing this? First of all, the subconscious mind can toss some ideas out there that are just garbage. But when the right answer appears, just like the example of the woman who had hypnotherapy and the pain in her arm went immediately, when the right answer appears, it can open up this whole new space. The problem can disappear that quickly. So I'm not sure right this second what habit there is I want to change. They occur all the time, and I do this exercise in order to address it. Where does it come from? Why am I doing that? I know the answer is there, and because I trust that the answer is there, the answer does appear, and I can address it right away.
Brilliant. I love that. I love the honesty of it and I love the transparency of it. And I think that it's nice to hear. I think sometimes that you've not forced anything there. You've just been honest and transparent. And we talked before about the industry that we're in, and sometimes there isn't a lot of honesty. There's a lot of cookie cutter mentality and trying to, again, square peg circle hole. So I love that. It's really refreshing, and it's a great insight to sort of your mind and how that works. So I've just clocked that we've just smashed an hour so easily there. So I think before we'll go, please, firstly, actually, thank you so much for your time. I know it's morning time over where you are in the States, so thank you for that. And let people know where they can find the book, where they can find you, where they can get onto the blog or anything that you've got going on. Just give yourself a couple of minutes to let the people know where they can find you, and I will put it all down in the description as well.
First of all, thank you, Jack. You are an excellent host. I think your podcast is going to go places. You do an excellent job.
Thank you
So
so
thank you
much.
so much. I've enjoyed our conversation. I like these interviews where it's just a natural conversation that is going on. To learn more about me, you can just go to my website. That is ravindertaylor.com. Um, the Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment, you can purchase that wherever books are sold. If your local bookstore doesn't have it, they can order it. You can buy it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, in England, Waterstones as well. I think that's a big chain over there. So you can buy the book wherever you like to purchase books. I'm also on social networking. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I love interacting with people. As I said, I teach what it is that I want to learn, and I learn from all the interactions that I have. I learn the techniques that work, the techniques that I can improve upon. So yeah, do friend me, do connect with me. If you read Mind Training, I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, thank you very much again, and I'm sure the people will get a lot from this, and be sure to check you out. Thank you so much. We've stopped there, so I hope that was okay, and I hope